Rabotai, we began yesterday our long discussion about base garmu here on Daf Lamed Ches in the Mishnah in Masechet Yoma. And we learned about base garmu, that they were the experts in the lechem aponim, but they refused to share their expertise, their knowledge, with anyone outside of their family. If this would have happened in the Soviet Union, I'm sure they would have had bugs in their room so that they would listen and record when they taught their children how to do this baking of the lechem aponim. But as it is, the Mishnah is very critical. We had a major machlokas yesterday about how to understand the application of the pasuk b'shem Rishon Yirkov with regard to the base garmu. But the thrust of, shall we say, we'll call it the classic understanding of this Mishnah is that they had no real serious, genuine justification. They fabricated some sort of a flimsy, shall we say, a covering of an excuse. They weren't interested in their own covet, even though we'll see that they charged the Chachamim double the price when they finally realized that the Umnim of Mitzrayim, of Alexandria, were not doing the job. This was a facade. They said, well, maybe it'll get in the hands of the wrong people, and they'll be over the Avodah Zarah, and they'll create the Lechem Aponim. So this is all the gnus. Says the Mishnah that we can apply the principle if God bestowed upon you these great talents, it was done not for your own self-glory, but rather to share and to bring out Kvod Shamayim. Shem Rishon Yirkov. As opposed to the previous Mishnah, where we learned about some great contributions, and there it was Lishva. Now we have the Brisa, which is here in line 5 of the wide lines on Daf Lamed Ches. Garmu hayu b'kiyim b'maisa lechem aponim v'lo rotzu l'lamed lacherim. We'll add the word lacherim. Sholchu chachamim ve'viu umnin ve'Alexandria shel Mitzrayim. They replaced this family of base garmu as if to say, we can do without you. If you're such big shots and you refuse to share your knowledge, then you know what? We'll take money from the Trumas Halichka and we'll hire workers from Mitzrayim and they will know how to do it. These are the experts of Mitzrayim. However, the Brisa records that it didn't work out the way they had planned. Hayodim lefos kimosam, below hayodim lirdos kimosam. As a result of the fact that they could not achieve Ridias Hapas, they had to do the Afiyah in a different way than the Beis Garmu, because the Beis Garmu knew how to do Ridias Hapas. Shahalalu masikim mibachutz v'ofim mibachutz. Because the great Umnan from Alexandria did not know how to do Ridias Hapas, they had to rely on a different method in which they would bake the breads, the lechem aponim, on the outside of the tanur. Because what happened is when you place the hot fires and you burn the outside of the tanur, the outside of the oven becomes red hot, such that now you can place the dough flat up and attach it, adhese it to the outside of the oven in such a way that you completely circumvent the Ridias Hapas. Ridias Hapas is a very, very tricky business when you have such a specific size and shape of the lechem aponim, to do it from the inside and take the baked bread outside when it's just baked. You can't leave it in too long. It's going to inevitably fall apart unless we are able to avoid Ridias Hapas. But as a result of avoiding Ridias Hapas, it wasn't baked in a way that it would last. It was a very flimsy kind of baking, and it would disintegrate, it would fall apart within a matter of time. But the Beis Garmu, in contrast, they knew exactly how to do Ridias Hapas. And therefore, Masikim Mibifnim, V'ofim Mibachutz. They did exactly what you would do if you were a professional baker by heating up the oven on the inside and then putting the dough into the oven and then removing it with this great talent of Ridias Hapas, despite the sensitivity and the specificity of the Lechem HaPanim. Alolo, in the case of the Alexandrian Umin, Piton Misapeshes, because they had to do these somersaults in the air to avoid Ridias Hapas, when they took the pas off the outside of the oven, it was a matter of time, and pas misapeshes. Now, this word ipush is familiar to us from Masechet Psachim with regard to a very famous sugya dafov called Pasha Ipsha. And what it means is that if you have a very hot dough that was baked, if it's very thick, then it spoils quickly. The heat, together with the other factor of the thickness of the dough, those two are explosive, if you put them together. And within a short amount of time, the bread just simply spoils. But halolu, the Beis Garmu, ain't pita misapeshes. They didn't have to worry about ipush. There was no spoilage because they did everything inside the oven. And they took it out of the oven with a great talent called Ridias Hapas. And the pas was very solid on its own. It didn't have this element of thickness, overly thick, that would speed up the process of ipush. And everything was great. So the Chacham now pulled the hair out of their head, and they realized we're in trouble. We don't have Lechem HaPanim without Beis Garmu. We are totally dependent on it. And the little I know about business tells me that if you have a patent on a very valuable, lucrative item, you could charge the world because no one could compete with you. And therefore, when the Chachamim got wind of the fact that these breads that were baked by the Umnim of Alexandria were falling apart, Amru, but now we have no choice because God gave the Chachma this wisdom, this talent, into the hands of the Beis Garmu. If they're the only experts, then we have no choice but to rehire them. Chazu Beis Garmu and Kom. So they rehired Beis Garmu. Shochalem Chachamim. It wasn't such a simple matter. Lo bo. So you pay our price, we're not coming. Kafulem Scharan. All right, we'll double your wages. Ubo, they came. Now, what were their wages? And we're going to discuss why the Mishnah has to go into such detail about this, to present the Machlokas Tanoim about how much was their original wages and how much was their wages after it was double. B'chol Yom, before this whole Maisa in which they were sent home packing, they were fired. Yeah, that's a significant amount of money, but keep in mind it's annual. So it's an annual contract, and they were agreed to be paid Shnei Masar month. Now we have to rehire them. And we saw that the Mishnah, the Brisa says, Kafu is Esr the Arba one. Now we have to pay them 24 mana a year. Rabbi Yehuda has a whole nother cheshbon. We double everything. B'chol yom, before this Maisa happened, Esr the Arba. Hayom, now we have to double it. Arboim u'shmonem mana. 48 mana. Now the impression you get here, and tell me if you could guess what my logic is, that initially, on the first round, the base Gamo did not vie for very high wages. What leads me to that conclusion? Why do I think, or why did the base Gamo think that they're not such big shots? They are replaceable. All right, on Zoom, I guess it's very hard. But Steve, you're here. Can you tell me why they figured we can't charge 24 or 48? Exactly. Chachamim are going to outsmart us. The Beis Gamu knew very well that there were experts in Chutz La'aretz, in this case in Mitzrayim, who could replace them. If you're replaceable, don't jack up, the price. So if you're negotiating to get hired and you're going to ask for a super duper price, imagine the following in the field that I'm in. If, let's say, you apply to become a rabbi, and let's say there's a shtela that's opened, I don't know, somewhere far out. It's down in Mississippi, it's in Australia, I don't know, somewhere on the face of the earth. So you're a big shot, you're a great scholar, and you have ordination from Skokie Yeshiva Hebrew Theological College in Chicago, or you have from Yeshiva University in New York. You're a big shot. So you say, I want 200 grand a year. No, that's not a smart thing. Because there are so many other rabbis on the face of the earth. And this, by the way, is true today. The market is flooded. To the point to which in Yeshiva University, they're already encouraging some of the smicha students to think about other occupations, going to law, going to business, investment. They have the Sai Sim school. In my day, if you were in the smicha program, it meant that you wanted to be a rabbi. But today, the market is flooded. So you better, if you want to make yourself an attractive candidate, you better slash it. And instead of demanding 200, you better settle for 150, or maybe even 100, because otherwise you're not going to be considered as a serious candidate. But now they sent off to Mitzrayim. They imported these workers, and guess what? They couldn't do the job. Now you want to rehire me. Beis Gamu realizes there's no competition. Now they jack up the price. Is there some sort of justification? Tell us why you're hoarding this knowledge. We have a tradition that dates back to our forefathers, our ancestors, that this Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. Now, once the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and then the lechem hapanim is no longer to be baked and brought on the shulchan, then the Jewish people are going to be dispersed, and there's going to be pressure from the nations of the world to try to eke out this knowledge from us. Maybe if we offer this knowledge publicly to others, then somebody who's not up to par might get wind of this knowledge. He knows now how to bake the lechem hapanim. Again, although it's hard for us to understand the Yetzer Hara for avodas kol chavim, the Gemara says in many places that back in the day, before the Anshe Knesset Agdol changed this all, the Yetzer Hara for Avodas Kacham was so intense. I mean, again, we can't imagine. But after the Churban, many Jews were despondent, and many went off to derek. And they would hide themselves off to Avodah Zarah. And they would tell the Avodah Zarah people that we have a secret method of baking breads in a perfect way that was so unique and so significant for our people that when the Mikdash stood, there was no one except for us who had this secret. And now there's somebody else who got wind of the secret, who knew how to bake these breads. He's going to hire himself off for idolatry, either because he believes in idolatry, chas v'shalom, or because he's vying for a very good price. Al davar zeh maskirin osam l'shva. It's very interesting that although the Mishnah had told us that v'shem rishayim yirkav, but nevertheless, in this brisa, there's a bright spot, a shvach, which I think indicates that the psychology is very complicated. I'm sorry. I put the period in the wrong place. So the Chachamim never accepted this excuse. They understood in their wisdom that this was just a facade. Hence, v'shem rishon yirk. Now we put a period. However, says the Mishnah, the Brisa, excuse me, al davar zeh, in the following dimension, maskirin osam l'shva. There is something that they did. There is a chumrah that they instituted for which they deserve our praise. Why? But they decided, this base garment, is that they would never feed their own children something that might be mistaken to lechem upon it. They wouldn't leave any room for a spectator to suspect that they were using their expert knowledge in order to feed their own children lechem upon it. So therefore, they would never bake anything for their children that vaguely resembled the lechem upon it. And that is pas nikia. Pas nikia means a very fine, refined flour that was made of chitin, and they removed all the chaff, all the bran, and such a flour, white fine flour, was never used by Beis Garmu in their home baking to feed their children. That's because of the Yisa and the Ki. Unbelievable psychology that on the one hand, they're interested in glory. They want to make sure that no one, except for them, has this expertise. But on the other hand, when it comes to the Yisa and the Kir, they very much care about what others might think of them. And they want to avoid any situation which the spectator might accuse them of using their knowledge for their own self-pleasure. As if to say that they would make the lechem upon him and make sure that there was lechem upon him for their children. Even though, again, lechem upon him means 12 lechamim. And once the lechem upon him is placed on the shulchan, then Beis Garmu is not superior to anybody else in Khan. So they can't grab the lechem upon him. Lechem upon him is divvied up between the Kohen Gadol and the other Kohen. But nevertheless, the suspicion was that maybe when they baked the lechem upon him, they finagled it in such a way that there'd be some extra lechem for that they could siphon off for their children. And the proof is, take a look. they are serving their children something, a bread that looks identical to the lechem haponim. So we'll come back to this in Mitzvah Shem a little later. I just want to spend a little time discussing the tzura of the lechem haponim. What exactly did it look like? And here we have a few lines based on Rashi and other Rishonim in the footnote here in the Masechet. If anybody happens to have the Masechet, which I always encourage you to get, it's footnote number Chaf Ches 28. And he says the following, that Tzuras Lechem Haponim Chaisa, listen to this, Ke'os Es Hafucha. So what you're going to have is then, let's imagine a ches. So you have this line, right, this line, and then two legs coming down. That's a ches. But he says, turn it upside down, right? Because by turning it upside down, it would seem that you're getting open area below the ches. And lechem haponim has to be open on two sides. Shabbatek hayazakuf kimin shnei ksolim ubi emtza haya avir beineim. Now I'm not sure why he says shnei ksolim. I mean, if it's a tzuras os ches, I would have written shlosha ksolim. What's this shnei ksolim? But what I do understand is the avir beineim, because since he turns it upside down, he's going to get one side is completely open, right, the bottom of the ches, and there's airspace throughout the ches. Because again, if you have a ches that's sitting, I don't know what you call it, right side up, right? So then it's going to be closed on three sides. We want it to be open on two sides. Amru, he quotes in Gemara Menachos, Shaya Asli Kiteva Prutza, Dahainu Kibin Teva Rechava, Shenital Kisuya, V'chein Shtei Defanoseha Zu Keneged Zu, V'nimta Sheyesh La Defanos Mishnei Ruchos, Uprutza Mishnei Ruchos Hachiros. I don't know, I'm tempted to think that what he means by ches, again, what I'm about to tell you may be totally wrong. Let's see if I move this down, right? Let's see, you see this, right? I know. You see this? So I think what he means by ches is something like this. Right? So if it's a ches like this, the top of the ches is flat on the ground, and now it could be open space from both ruchos. But then he turns it upside down. Right? What I'm trying to figure out is if the goal here is to create lechem haponim that's open on two sides, why does he have to turn it upside down? Botzek Zakov Kibin Snake Soul. Okay, that we got. BMCH Aver Beneyan. The Haya Asui Geteva Prutza, the Hainu Kimin Teva Rechava Shenital Kisuya. Oh, I think I know what he means. Teva Fucha is the exact opposite of what I just demonstrated. I turned it upside down. No. It's upside down if you leave it the way I had it originally. That's called an upside down ches. So the Teva Fucha is now open on two sides, and it has two defanos zu keneged zu. And he says, Ovi alechem tefach. So the thickness of the bread is one tefach. Ach al yidei shahayu ofen oso bitfus. Right, they put it into a what's called how do you say tfus in English? Like a cookie mold. The mold is kliya asi kitavnis tzuras lechem upon it. Hayu mekalfin also be odo botzeg. They would be able to peel it off while it's still a dough. I'm not sure what he means by mekalfin. What do you think he means by mekalfin? I don't know. Not sure what he's peeling off of me. He writes here that the Rambam holds that lama hayitzrichem umnus b'afiyaso. Why was it so critical that we get this expertise? Shelo yishaveh below yisaper. I guess because it's open on two sides, it's very sensitive, very fragile. Again, let's just look one more time at this picture. So I think, again, in this picture, I don't know if you can see it. You won't be able to see it here. But anyway, in this picture, what you'll see is that it's open on two sides. See, he's got this business with the chronos here that jut out. But forget about the chronos for a minute. It's open on these two sides. And it's closed on these two sides. And it's flat on its back, which I think he calls a chesafuch. He says, that they were shaped like an open box with two sides missing. Okay, an open box with two sides missing. The Alexandrians were afraid to bake the loaves within the oven because they did not have expertise regarding the technique for removing them without breakage. So that's what we have. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit more research on this, and then we have to go on. So let me just wish everyone a wonderful day. Get better news.
No. Okay, thank you.